This is The Fringe Majority with Jody Ledgerwood and Cris Valack.
Hello.
Hello. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. You're not going to hear that anywhere else, eh?
No,
No.
not at all. I missed everybody. You know, it's been a week since we've been on live.
Right. Yeah, we had those 2 cafe Welshmarshes on in a can, and we had to get those out. So we finally got those done, and now we're back at her. Yeah.
Now we're back out.
There you go.
Yeah. So our weekend was pretty boring. No?
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah.
I know you spent it building shelves and
Built
cleaning
them.
garages, but what I mean is we didn't do anything like freedom fighting, rally, protesting. We had a real life weekend.
It was nice. Yeah. For once. Nice little break in the Freedom Day. Yeah, still lots going on, hey? Lots going on.
Yeah, before we get into the show, we saw about 10 minutes ago, Harold Jonkers made an announcement. For those of you who are part of the Freedom Convoy, I take that out because it's echoing in my ear. For those of you who are part of the Freedom Convoy, you'll know who Harold Jonkers was. He had 11 or 12 trucks down at the Freedom Convoy a year ago in Ottawa. He contributed financially and physically, and he has been a huge proponent of the freedom fight, standing up for people's rights and ability to choose. And about a half hour to an hour ago, he turned himself into the Niagara Regional Police because apparently there was a warrant out for his arrest. He has been charged with 4 counts of criminal charges, 1 being mischief, 2 being counseling to perform mischief, 3 obstruction of highway, and the 4th one didn't even make any sense, so I didn't even write it down. He actually has to turn himself in on May 10th to the Ottawa Police at 8:30 in the morning. He's currently out on a peace bond or a bond. So Harold, our prayers are with you. You made that announcement in I don't know how you're holding up. You've got this giant family that you take care of, and your children were there. You turned yourself into the Niagara Regional Police, and you all handled yourself with amazing grace and patience and love. And I know you have faith in the Lord that He will protect you and deliver you from these bogus and ridiculous charges. So I just wanted to say our thoughts and prayers are with you, and I'm sorry that you are experiencing this and your family is now going to have to endure this a year and a bit after the fact. So you are a great inspiration to many, many people. So our hearts and prayers are with you. There was also another announcement made earlier today by Vice President Kamala Harris.
Who?
Kamala, I don't know, Camel Harris. How about that? Kamala Harris, because that's what I think of her right at this moment in time, if you can call her her.
Well, you didn't hit the low-hanging fruit on
I try not to.
Mm-hmm.
But as of May 11th, the U.S. will be, at the end of day, May 11th, will be lifting most travel restrictions that are currently in place, our vaccination passport process. So if you're traveling by air to the U.S., you can now travel by air as of May 12th, or May 12th, 11 or 12:01 a.m. May 12th, you can now travel into the U.S. So yay by air. However, it did say Campbell.
I'm disappointed that I actually put that up in itself, really.
You know what?
Yes.
I used to sing Alice the Camel had those hunts when I was younger. So thank you for the memory flashback. But the travel restrictions are lifted for all foreign air travelers into the U.S., but not lifted for all land travelers. It says to certain non-citizens traveling by land border. So I'm curious to know who those non-citizens are that won't be allowed still to enter the U.S. by land travel. I'm very curious. Do you think it'll be Canadians, Asians, Mexicans? Ooh.
The freedom flags all over their freaking van. Maybe them.
Hasn't stopped me in the last year. It's not going to stop me as of May 12th. So those are two really big announcements. One to a fellow freedom fighter, and one to let everybody know who wants to travel that as of May 12th at 12:01 a.m., you will be able to travel to the U.S. by
airplane. Yay.
and most likely by land, because they didn't say Canadians, they said certain non-citizens. So I'm hoping that you all are of the class of citizens that are allowed.
Mm-hmm.
So those are our two big announcements today.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
We're done. Thanks for coming out. Who can afford to travel? That's about it, right? After the last year that we've had, people's financial resources are kind of non-existent.
Drying up. Yeah.
And they definitely don't let you travel on likes. So
Oh, we've tried. We have believed you. We've tried. Yeah. So that was another. Oh, my mic is really hot for some reason. That was another thing that we picked up a post from the World Economic Forum, and Jody showed it to me, and I'm like, I don't believe it. I don't actually believe it. And so I went and searched it. I didn't find the thing that you showed me, but I did find this. So there's the United Nations Sustainable Goals or Development Goals Summit in 2023. Now, just in case you don't know, that WEF donut, that circular donut at the top, that is the Sustainable Goals donut. It's a UN thing. And then here is their conference coming up, and we'll bring that picture back up in a couple minutes. But
save the date, folks, women, men, children. September 18th to the 19th, 2023, New York.
Yeah.
Maybe we all should make a date to meet at the SDG Summit 2023. Yeah. I'm sure they're going to be discussing a lot of things that concern us.
Right, and you only have till October, so let's make the most of it, right?
Yeah. But who's been wearing that pin?
Trudeau has been caught wearing that. It's a nice picture of him with George Soros's son. Not even hiding it anymore. You know, they were like dueling banjos, him and Freeland. Like, who can we talk to that is kind of the most egregious human being on the planet? And I guess neither one of them were able to catch up with Yuval Harari, but they did see George Soros's son, allegedly son, because who would spend time with that dude, and then Freeland and Hillary Rodham Clinton are getting together to hang out and chat. Yeah, at the Liberal Convention. Anyway, back to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Conference. They are having this conference. The 2023 SDG Summit is enormously significant, with a number of world leaders expected to attend. They will reflect on the process achieved.
Progress.
That thing. And then the purpose and proposed strategies to accelerate the implementation of Agenda 2030. So it says they've suffered unforeseen setbacks due to COVID-19 and Ukraine and all that stuff. But they also made mention in that article, they alluded to the idea that that they're behind track because of civil attacks. Yeah. So basically the freedom fighters are slowing things down. So that's good news.
Means what we're doing is working, guys.
Congrats, Fringe Nation. You're making a difference. So, but that makes them want to speed things up. Let's just go back to this picture a half a second. Here's that Sustainable Development Goals conference that they're, and I looked at that and I said to myself, that looks familiar. That looks very familiar.
And not just because of the rainbow.
No. Now, what does that look like? Well, let's maybe bring that up. Oh.
Look at that.
Look at the similarity. That's not enough for you.
Look at that.
Getting warmer. Now look at this one.
Look at that.
Rallies. So history seems to be repeating itself. Even down to the 3 columns of the eagle, to the 3 columns up there. Yeah, I don't think I'm drawing a parallel that is way too out of the box there. I think history is repeating itself, and we know that this is the rise of the Fourth Reich. We may as well just start talking about it openly, because that's what we're looking at.
What it is.
Interesting.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
When we don't learn from history, it does have a habit of repeating itself. And we do know that the Nazis never left, as evidenced by our deputy PM, right? Nazis never left. And in fact, they were just hidden. A lot of them were hidden on Vancouver Island. A lot of them were hidden in the U.S. Nuremberg trials, I believe only 12 were actually brought brought forward and criminally convicted. But we know there was a lot more than 12 Nazis.
There's Argentina and Operation Paperclip, and we all know about those things. But it really, the secret behind that is that it wasn't really the Nazis; it was the people that funded them. So there have been the same companies have been funding wars since long before World War One. Back to the Bolshevik Wars and on and on and on. These companies just transform and change. Bayer's been part of it. They became IG Farben with 6 companies, and then they split back out because of the Nuremberg trials. So they're just the same people funding these things over and over and over again. So we'll get deeper into that.
Bear, Bosch.
We've been literally spending last 3 weeks, just digging into this stuff and learning and learning and learning. And we're going to break it all down into a show soon, or maybe 2 shows, because it's such a big topic.
It's a lot.
Anyway, yeah. So that's going on. Sharpen your pencils and save the date. And then Jody and I, we have a responsibility here. We have, we do broadcast, and so we want to make sure that we are guiding people well, and we want to use our voice for positivity. And again, we're just disgusted with what we see out in society, and we just want to show this, because absolutely do not do this. We just cannot believe people would do this, and we find it egregious, and we're going to
keep showing you this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
While we can, because we know C11 did pass. The Senate accepted the bill as is, so it did pass. So who knows how much longer we will be on the air, but as long as we are on the air, we're going to continue to show you.
Yeah.
Except, you shouldn't be.
We'll discourage you from doing these things
to stop our prisons from evolving around us.
Look at this guy. Couldn't even commit to an angle grinder. I like the hammer drop right at the end.
Perfect.
I mean, if you're going to do something horrific like that, then at least, nail that hammer drop at the end there. So again, one of those things that you really shouldn't do.
Taking down the surveillance cameras while he still can. And what amazed me about this guy is he's got the balls to do it during the daytime. During the daytime. The other videos we've showed you, it's all happened in the dark of night. They're all wearing dark, harder to recognize them, harder to pick them out. This guy's like, I don't give a shit. I'm taking this surveillance camera out during the day, and I don't care who sees me. And you know why he doesn't care who sees him? Because the cameras are everywhere. So there's really no escaping. There's no hiding what he's doing. There's no hiding the escape route. But he's like, screw it. I'm going to show you all. And show you all how to do this, and the rest of you better be climbing up these poles as well along with me. I think really what he needed to do was get a team of people to go all out at once and hit all the cameras at once. That would have been way smarter than what he did. He went out as a single, but I think if he had gone out with a bunch of teams and coordinated their efforts at the same time, they probably could have gotten a whole whack of them taken out, and then they could have left without being noticed.
Yeah, and we're saying, again, we're just adding that to the list of things to never ever do.
Oh, please don't do it.
No, please don't do that, with anything as simple as a hammer.
No.
Okay. We got a big show. We got a big show. We've been meaning to do this for a long time, and we haven't. Netherlands happened and everything else happened. And yeah. So it's a gigantic show.
We're talking about identity today, and we know that identity has been, top of mind for a lot of parents who are dealing with gender dysphoria with their children, with the school, with SOGI, and even within our own movement, people are losing their identities, and we know that this is a spiritual war we're in, and one of the things that they attack first is your identity. But we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. So this is my wheelhouse. This is my jam. So for those of you who don't know, I've spent 25 years doing communications. A lot of that was advertising marketing. A lot of that was trying to figure out what made people tick. And even I did stand up for a while. And again, you have to try and figure out what an audience finds funny. I don't think I ever found that. Anyway, that's what
All the time.
that's when I'm tripping over something. Yeah. So there's a few things that in advertising marketing. Wizard of Ads said it really well. The same reason people join a church is the same reason they buy Nike, or they follow a certain celebrity, and that's because they want to identify with people. They want to tribe up. They need to belong. They have this need to belong to a collective. And if they don't have like a set identity, they'll end up gravitating towards something so they can identify with people in that particular camp. And so this need to belong is probably the biggest need that we all have. And so that is one
It's
of
a
the
fundamental innate need.
right. And that's one of the big things that has been taken advantage of in the last few years is this threat that you no longer belong unless you comply, and that has been a big driver for a lot of people. And that has I think my theory on that is because that driver is because we don't have strong identities anymore, and that has been intentional over the course of decades, removing our identities from one another, both on a national level, a country national identity level, as well as an individual level. And you can see the progression, right? But we want to point it out. We know that you folks out there in Fringe Nation, you're smart, you're savvy, you know these things. But it's good to point these things out, and maybe you can grab some clips and show some other people.
But one of the things we noticed today when I started doing some research was the first thing I always do is define what is identity. So the Oxford Dictionary definition of identity is the fact of being who or what a person or thing is, or two, a close similarity or affinity. That was the Oxford Dictionary. And then I pulled up the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, and it said the being of the same. Identity was being of the same.
Yeah, no, it could be a bad definition. I think what they're trying to say is that
The definition, remember I looked at the date and
Mhm.
it said as of April 22nd, 2023,
just recently changed.
they
Yeah,
changed the definition of identity in the Merriam-Webster Dictionary.
right. So I think what they're trying to get is the concept of how am I different from the sameness of everyone else, right?
But that's not what it said. It said being the same.
It's just maybe it's badly explained, or maybe it's either way. Yeah, there's a lot of programming going on over the course of years, as we all know. And so we thought we would get into identity. Now, I used to do this for a living. I used to go to companies and we would find out what their corporate identity was. And usually you find out that it's not the destination, it's the journey. It's asking those questions that people don't really ask of themselves, like, what is my company? What's the purpose? What's it? And so I would do that. And then it turns out that actually just translates to a life thing. You can actually have those conversations with people and help them, because a lot of people don't even spend time trying to figure out what their identity is. It's work, home, sleep, or work, home, play with the kids, dinner time, sleep, hit repeat, and that's about it. And we need to spend time. Sometimes we need to spend time looking at what our identity is, who we are in the world, because the one thing that you have is purpose and destiny.
Mhm.
And you're going to find that Team Tyranny, whoever that may be, we need to define what Team Tyranny is sometimes. But Team Tyranny to me is like everyone that you want to put that label on: Nazis or communists or fascists or globalists or Illuminati, Masons, whatever, lizard people, who cares? That's all Team Tyranny. People who want to rob you of your identity, and they want you to become part of a collective because they just want you to be a sheep, and they want you to be controlled easily. But you have purpose, you have destiny, you have an identity, and you have a reason for being in this world, and you actually are here to make change, right?
In real estate, they used to, again, back to your advertising thing, they used to say, well, what is your unique selling proposition? Your unique selling purpose? Because everybody says, oh, well, I offer a good client service and I offer this and I have integrity and whatever. Well, that doesn't make you unique from anybody. And your identity, there are are two main characteristics of identity. One is continuity. It means you're the same person today as you were yesterday, as you will be tomorrow. People, your sex doesn't change, your name doesn't change, your age doesn't change. People understand certain mannerisms of yours. The way you walk doesn't typically change, right? So that's continuity. But there's also contrast, and that contrast is what makes you unique from the person beside you.
Mhm.
And people forget we are unique.
Right. And the one thing I would caution is that you don't want to get mixed up. Like, there are consistencies to you. There are base root portions of your identity. You have core identity, and then you have sub identities. And your core identity is probably going to be fairly constant, but your sub identities, you shuffle them in and out all the time. You change, you adapt, you grow. As you gather more information, you throw things out that haven't worked, and you learn from your mistakes, and you learn from other people, and you get better, and you grow and change. Right. So constant in some ways, but adapting, and you should always look at yourself every few years and say, hey, are some things that I can throw out. Right. And it's really hard to do because nobody likes change, and nobody really wants to look at themselves, and it's a tough thing to do. But again, the ultimate thing here is you have purpose and you have destiny. You have a reason for being here, and there are a lot of people who want to convince you don't. Right. So we're going to talk about identity.
And three of the interacting elements of identity, or things that shape your identity, there's three of them. One is your biological characteristics. The second one is your unique psychological needs, interests, and deficiencies. And then the third one is your cultural milieu, and I'm going to say that wrong, melee,
No, that's right.
in which you reside. So your personal, your family, and your social all make up your identity.
Mhm. Yeah, some personal, some environmental.
Exactly.
Right. So I found a really great article in the Psychology USA Psychology Today, which was really good, and it really helps. So 3 goals are required for the task of identity formation. The first task is discovering and developing one's personal potentials. Personal potentials refer to those things that the person can do better than other things. How can the person discover what those potentials are? The answer is in a process of trial and error, as we discussed. The second step is choosing one's purpose in life. It is necessary to choose what we are seeking to accomplish in our lives, or to achieve substantial success in fulfilling our purpose. The objectives must be compatible with our talent and skills, our authentic self. A lot of people are going to equate that to career, but that's not necessarily the case, right? Not always the case. And so finally, one is required to find opportunities to implement that potential and purpose. Open societies allow for role mobility and flexibility to implement identity-related choices. However, this is not the case in closed and rigid societies. I think you meant closed.
Yeah.
So, what we're going to get to today really is how important identity is. If you want to fight against what's coming, and we all know stuff is coming, it's really important that we have those identities figured out. And that's a hard thing. Sometimes it takes years and years and years, and sometimes people get it fairly quickly.
Mhm.
So, but it's super important.
It is super important.
Your turn.
My
Yeah, you were going to read this next bit.
Oh, I was? Okay, well, bring it up. So identity. Oh, that's right. So identity deficits arise when a person has not formed an adequate identity and thus has trouble making major decisions because he or she has no inner foundation. So it's very important to have a foundation of where we start from. And your foundation typically starts with your race, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your gender, your abilities, your religious or spiritual beliefs, your nationality, and your socioeconomic status. Those tend to be pretty static. Your socioeconomic status tends to change, and sometimes your religious spiritual beliefs change, and your abilities typically evolve. But the other things are pretty standard. So identity, when there's a deficit, that's when things can go really awry. And in the last 2 to 3 years, we have been suffering from identity deficits. And I'll continue reading this. Identity deficits often occur when a person discards old values or goals. But rejecting old beliefs and assumptions creates a void or an identity deficit, which is accompanied by feelings of emptiness and uncertainty. And such feelings prompt people to search for new beliefs, for new values and goals. People who are trying to fill this identity deficit may try on new belief systems, explore new relationships, and investigate new ideas and values. People in identity deficit are particularly vulnerable to the propaganda of various groups. They are often very curious about other belief systems and are easily influenced by others. This is because of their feelings of emptiness and their search for new values and ideas. As Bowmaster did a study in 1997, points out recruiters for cults are often done to people who are undergoing identity deficit crisis. So if you don't have a good foundation, then you're very susceptible to identity deficits. But that being said, we naturally will go through identity deficit phases in our life, such as when we go from being preteen to a teenager. There's an identity deficit there because your hormones are changing, things are happening, your value system's changing, your body's changing, all these crazy things are happening to you. And you're trying to figure out who you are, where you belong, where you fit in society. Being a teenager is really, really a crucial moment in time. And then you go through it again when you leave the high school and go into either post-secondary or adulthood. That change of adulthood, again, people tend to feel lost and confused about where they're going, who they are, what are they, how do they fit in society, how do their abilities, their uniqueness fit, does it fit? And as young teenagers, a lot of times you feel like you don't fit, you don't belong. So you tend to do anything you can. You are now very susceptible to propaganda.
Mhm.
And I know when we were growing up, we weren't really exposed to a lot of TV. We definitely weren't exposed to the internet. They didn't have the internet when I was growing up. So we didn't have all those extra outside influences. Our influences were typically music and whoever our social circles were. So if you were really well inclined or on a team or something like that, you already had this social circle that kind of helped keep you grounded. But if you didn't have a good circle of friends, a bunch of positive influences in your life, good role models, a good family, you tended to be more vulnerable to propaganda and to other cult relationships coming in. And that's what's happened in the last 3 years. The Agenda 2030 is about zeroing in on people who are in identity deficit crisis and manipulating their foundations, manipulating their identity to fit a certain agenda that they have going on.
Right.
Our children right now in our schools are a big part of this identity deficit crisis that's happening.
Yeah, and I would argue it's been going on a lot longer than 3 years. We're going to show some examples of how there's been a concentrated effort since Trudeau got in 2015. We're going to show that. Yeah, and it's been a long generational thing. It has been a long systematic detaching of families. The attack on the nuclear families you've often mentioned, right? So if you separate kids from their parents and you make it so you don't want to talk, and then you get into this fear cycle because the parents don't know what to do, and then the kid pulls away more, and all that stuff. So there's been this concerted weakening of Western culture families. I shot a lot of weddings for Sikhs and other cultures, and they actually do have a sense of family. Sometimes dysfunctional, for sure, but their sense of family is very, very tight, and it's something that we have predominantly lost in a lot of Western culture. And so
the sense of family when all of a sudden things started to become more and more expensive and women had to enter the workforce, and some parents ended up having to take on 2 jobs. And then when the nuclear family started to disband and divorces became more acceptable, I remember growing up, I was the only kid in my class that had divorced parents. Everybody else came from 2-parent families. And that was very hard for me because that made me different from everybody else. but I had a really great friend base, which helped me get through all those difficult times. And I can't imagine, especially in the last 3 years, what our kids have gone through with the isolation, the lockdowns, the mandates, being told that they're going to kill everybody if they go outside, being told that they can't play sports unless they're vaccinated, being told they have to wear a mask and cover up their facial identity, their biological identity. They have to cover that up in order to go outside. So the government or global elites or tyrannical regime has really messed with our children at a very crucial time when typically and normally they would be suffering from an identity deficit, but they've quadrupled how bad this deficit actually is in the last few years.
Well, again, I'm going to argue that it's been going on. You see this. I saw this started coming, long before this with helicopter parenting, and I did I did some research on what they called handoff parenting. So back in our day, back in the day, the old days, the olden days.
Golden age.
That's right, when we had horses. Um, Back then, you and I, we'd get on our bikes and we'd be gone, and we wouldn't be back. We'd be told, "Don't come home till dinner." As a matter of fact,
When the street
yeah,
lights came on, I knew I had to be home.
right,
I
yeah,
had breakfast and then I was gone. And even going to school, I was what they called a latchkey kid. So at 7 years old, I wore a rope around my neck with our house key on it.
right.
And I would go home after school. I'd let myself in. I would put away my school stuff, do whatever homework I had, and then I would wait till my parents got home. Or I would leave a note saying gone, and I'd be gone till the streetlights came in.
Right, back in the day, 5 cents for a Bigfoot. You know, you know,
You could get 5 big butts for 5 cents.
yeah, 25 cents for a handful of double bowls. Anyway, but now we've got this, not just now. The term helicopter parent is pretty common now, but they've put the fear into the parents that if you let your kid go, if you let your kid out of your sight, your kid's going to get taken from you. It's not, I can't blanket talk that, but where I'm from, that's not common. One of the most famous cases of that happening actually happened in my hometown. So it's Michael Dunnihy, and everybody's heard of Michael Dunnihy. But so what they have is the handoff now. So you would take your kids to the soccer coach, and you would hand them over to your soccer coach, and your soccer coach would hand them back to you at the end of the day. Or you take them to school and you hand off your kids to the teachers. We always walk to school, right?
Yeah.
Kids don't do that anymore. A lot of kids do.
You can be driven to school now.
Right. So wherever they go, it's called the handoff, where they hand off to one parent, and that actually impedes emotional growth. So your child doesn't actually get a chance to become independent and mature. And now you've got these grown adults. When I first studied that, these kids, when I was first studying, are now adults, and these are the adults who are going, "I'm going to go do adulting now." They don't actually identify as adults. So now you've got these emotionally impeded, right? For lack of the retarded word, you've got these emotionally stunted adults now, who, when we say they're going to give you the great reset, and they're going to take your money away and give you no allowance, and they're going to tell you where you can live, and they're going to tell you, and there's a bunch of people out there who are going to kill you if you try to take that away from them. Right? They're so emotionally stunted that is good. They'll fight you to the death for that.
Yeah.
Because that sounds great. They don't have to be adults. And so now you've got these emotionally stunted people. These kids are not allowed to be, or these adults are no longer adults. Right? Yeah. So this has been happening for quite a while. And now you've got these people who just they don't even know how to be adults, right? They don't know maturity, and they don't know how to process things on a mature, logical, analytical, non-violent way. Where now they've got your microaggressions and all.
So again, identity deficits.
Identity deficits. So what they're
It's been a giant part of the Agenda 2030. Well,
Doing the-
giant part of Agenda
doing the
2030.
Italian thing a lot.
I know.
So you've got, that's another way of saying basically what they've been doing intentionally is emptying the cup so they can fill the cup, your cup, with whatever it is they want. And that's what they're doing. They're removing identity on every level. So you have no sense of self, you have no sense of society, you have no sense of national whatever. And we'll be getting more and more into that. And so then you've got this deficit, and they can fill you with whatever. And here's a little bit more on that psychology today. I just wanted to finish off that article with this. Identity is never final and it continues to develop through the lifespan. Knowing one's identity accurately increases self esteem and reduces depression and anxiety. When people are doing what they think they should be doing, they are happy. So, this is again, this is a psychiatrist that's saying that. Now, I want to go back to reduces depression and anxiety. It's never one thing that they're doing, it's always several things that we're doing, but one of the desired outcomes for them is depression. Why? Because depression equals compliance. That's why. So they want to keep you more compliant by keeping your head in a fog, by keeping you emotionally stunted, by keeping you depressed, because then you're just trying to cope with getting out of bed in the day and you don't have enough energy left to fight the government on a dishonorable government.
And the other side of that, it said knowing one's identity makes you happy.
Yeah.
So first, the government strips you of your identity, strips you of your ability to be independent emotionally and psychologically and socioeconomically. They shut down a lot of businesses and a lot of people suffered. Now all of a sudden they couldn't provide for their family. They're now socioeconomically not complacent, but they don't know where they stand in economically speaking, financially speaking. It put them in a depression and made them again put them again in an identity deficit way. And when the government or the globalists said, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, they really meant it. This was the plan. Kill your personal identity, make everybody identity deficient, makes everybody depressed, anxious, and then they'll come in with this solution. Don't worry, we're going to put you in a 15-minute city. We're going to tell you what job you can have. We can tell you where you can shop. We're going to tell you where you can live. We're going to tell you where you can go to school, and then you'll be happy.
That's where the filling of the cup comes in, because we're again, when you have a deficit, you're susceptible to cults, and now all of a sudden they've got you as a part of the collective, and we can point to that right during the programming phase. So they pulled us out of routine and locked us down, and we were all confused because we were out of our routines, and that's when they started going, we're all in this together, we're all in this together. And then it was, you all got to wear a mask, to protect others, then you got to get vaccinated to protect others, and that was keeping you as part of the collective and removing your own identity, your self identity, removing your sense of self, your sense of purpose and destiny, and dehumanizing you and turning you into a number.
And taking away your biological features that make you unique to the person next to you. Unless, Chris, you're an identical twin. But they've removed all of that. The last 3 years, they've done a great job of creating identity deficits.
Right. So we know a lot of this already, right? But we want to show you that they've been doing it not only on individual levels, but Trudeau came right out of the gate trying to destroy our national identity. Right out of the gate, he almost ran on this platform to get erected.
And he left.
Yeah.
Not he did.
No.
He met you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, maybe for him, he thinks it's a straight erection to God.
Okay. That moving on. So you notice this is 2016. This comes out of an article from in the New York Times Magazine. Trudeau says Canada has no core identity. So he's basically said, Canada, they don't have an identity. They've never had an identity. So we're going to fix that for Canada. So he started with a national identity and breaking apart national identity and making it socially unacceptable to be part of what made Canada what it was.
That's right.
So
and the big 8, and I don't think I said this at the beginning, but identity, there's 8 really big constructs to identity: race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, ability, religious or spiritual beliefs, nationality, and your socioeconomic status. Those are the big 8 that form your foundation.
Right.
And Trudeau came out of the gate and said, Canada has no identity.
No core identity. And then he went on to say, this is that article that we mentioned. This was coming out of that article. It's a long article, and I've linked to it. I'll link to it in the our past episodes. Trudeau's most radical argument is that Canada is becoming a new kind of state, not defined by its European history, which is part of its core identity, but by the municipality of its identities.
Multiplicity.
yeah, that thing. Maybe I'll slow down a little. From all over the world. There is no core identity, he says, no mainstream in Canada, he claims, which was wrong. Those qualities are what make us the first post-national state. And those qualities are there are shared values: openness, respect, compassion, willingness to work hard, to be out there for each other, and to search for equality and justice, all of which were negated in 2020, right? Those qualities are what make us the first post-national state. Now, let's make sure that we know what that is. Post-national state, I'm sure you can guess what that is, but basically that's saying we are not a nation, we're part of a global community, is basically what he's setting up there. So post-national is like after Canada. What comes after Canada is Canada, and that is, as we've seen, a sellout to the globalist agenda, right?
And the crazy thing is that Canada was built on Christian values. We had an identity. People came here because we were known as the peacemakers. They came here because we were known as those who love and give love and are friendly and welcoming. That's who we were. We were people that prided ourselves in family values, in core Christian values, in truth and honesty and love for every man, and treating everyone equally. That was our core value as Canadians.
We're too polite.
Yeah, too
We
polite.
apologize all the time. Sorry about that.
And
Yeah.
Trudeau removed that. He removed that, saying, no, well, Pierre Trudeau actually was the first one to say, Trudeau's father was the first one to say, no, we're a multicultural nation. And that's when they started the erosion of Canadian values. And then,
Sorry, just going back, who's Trudeau's father?
well,
Okay.
history books say Pierre Elliott Trudeau.
Right.
Biology, I'm pretty sure, is saying Castro.
We should do a DNA test. Anyway, yeah. So he came out of the gate. He came out of the gate attacking national identity, and that national identity, for good or bad, sure, there's been some stuff in history that we need to rectify, but we were brought in, like, civilized by European nations. We had the French and the English come in here. We have had predominantly a Christian nation. We have been. A lot of the rules that we have in Canada come out of the values of the Bible. So these are what has formed the foundation of Canada.
Even the Indigenous schools, and not that I want to go that route at all, but we had Indigenous people here, the natives, and even they were schooled in Christian values, right?
Right. I mean, the residential schools is that can of worms that, there are some things that Canada, needs to look at and rectify. There was we are well aware that Trudeau hyped and amped up a lot of things that were untrue in that whole thing, and then immediately launched us into being another genocide country, which a lot of people are refuting. But that's not to say that people didn't suffer. I mean, I've personally seen racism. I used to think didn't even exist, and then I talked to friends of mine who adopted they're white people who adopted a black girl from Philadelphia, and they literally had racial slurs spray painted on their garage, and this is just a average middle-aged or middle class neighborhood, and they had bricks thrown through the windows, and like, I've never seen anything. I personally have never seen any racism like that, and obviously it's been going on for quite a while. So I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not saying it doesn't need to be addressed and fixed and all that stuff. But at the same time, I almost thought we were beating it. Right? I almost thought that we were getting over it. Now we're back in it. So now it is like.
But not only are we back in it, our own PM is
He's spewing. Yeah. So now the European nation, he's actually come out and said that, that's an old boys club and it's got to go. And he wanted to increase the French over the English, and it's predominantly an English country. I know that there's one province that would beg to differ. So it's not, I'm not pushing for right or wrong in anything here. I'm just saying, like, here are the majority norms, and here are some of the foundations that built our country. And he's attacking every single one of those foundations. Not like how can we do better, but let's just tear down what was all of a sudden, and that is causing confusion in our country. And that's now, it is now,
Right.
People are embarrassed for their history and their culture, and their people are, they're embarrassed for their own race. And there are some things that we need to address for sure.
Yeah.
But it's really kind of blown a foundation out of the country, and he's saying that's for the better. And I'm saying, well, there's never been more fighting in our country than in since 2015 when he got in. And so that is this confusion and this lack of consistency in our national identity is causing more anger and more strife.
That's it. He has attacked all of our big eights constructs of identity. He's attacked the races. He's attacked our ethnicity. He's attacked sexual orientation. When you can't even and gender, when you can't even define what a woman is anymore, we've definitely lost identity. He's attacked our abilities when he took away our ability to earn an income and to be entrepreneurs and to play sports and go to school. He attacked our abilities. He attacked religion and spirituality. When they started taking religion out of school, you no longer going to school. We always started the day singing "O Canada" and sang the Lord's Prayer. They no longer say the Lord's Prayer in school, and the kids don't even know the words to "O Canada," and they've changed the anthem I don't know how many times now. I still sing it the old way, but I know when I'm standing in a crowd of people, most of the people don't sing it because they don't know the words. Some of the people are singing it the old way, some of the people are singing it the new way, and some of the people are singing it the both languages way. So he has literally attacked all 8 of our big constructs.
Right. Another one of those big ones is religion, right? And so now religion, I was like, we're going to talk about this tonight, but I really want to delineate between religion and actual relationship with Jesus. And, and I've got some really great Sikh friends, and I know, so I want to delineate between spirituality and religion, because those are 2 different things for me, and I'm disillusioned with religion. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to go so far as saying that the majority of churches screwed the pooch in the last 3 years. They lost an opportunity there, and they need to readjust their thinking, I think, in a lot of cases. However, that said, there's some really great churches out there too. So this is about spirituality, but we were predominantly a Christian society. And the first thing that he did right out of the gate was Harper had an Office of Religious Freedoms. Do you remember that? So Harper saw what was happening in Quebec, and Harper decided to set up a protection office to keep religious freedoms going. And he knew what that meant. It meant at the time, just before that time, there was that big emboldened battle with Sikhs wearing turbans instead of the uniforms and all that stuff. And he knew what that meant. So he meant religious freedom for all. And then the first thing that almost second day, Trudeau came in and he took that out, right? The Religious Freedom Office replaced with new Office of Human Rights. The government argues that a more comprehensive approach would do for religious freedom because Canada would be doing more to advance all human rights at home and abroad. The new office will have 3 divisions: human rights and Indigenous affairs, inclusion and religious freedom, and democracy. Now, how did that work out? The first thing I can think is, well, Quebec is not allowed to wear religious symbols anymore. That's pretty big. That was a pretty big deal. And democracy included. So how did that work out, right? Because religious freedom has been attacked since then.
Well, look at all the pastors that have been jailed. So where's religious freedom? And it's on the books. It's a crime. It's a criminal offense to interrupt a religious ceremony in a church. And yet, how many pastors have been arrested for holding church services, and even arrested during church service?
Or arrested for praying in a parking lot.
Arrested for praying in a parking lot.
For praying. So that's one thing. But then also there is the attack on well, do you remember this right out of the first or second year, Liberals add charter rights caveat to summer jobs program and funding. It was 2008, so it's 3 years in. Do y'all remember that? Applicants were required to attest to both the job of the employer's core mandate respecting individual human rights in Canada, which meant churches that didn't agree with abortion didn't get funding. And he said, "Oh no, Patty Hyde was like, no, that's not what that means." And that's what happened.
I
Mhm.
was at that time in charge of the youth theater program with Northumberland Players, and I had to fill out the applications for the grants, the summer camp grants, and it was on there asking us what our belief system was when it came to the right to choose and abortion rights. We actually had to put that on our application. Now we were just a local community theater group that believed in inclusivity, etc. We believed in a person's right to choose. It's a community theater. We don't have any religious affiliations. So we were able to apply for the grant and get it. But I remember many youth church group programs, summer camp programs, didn't qualify for the grants for youth summer camps,
Right.
because they were a Catholic summer camp.
Right. So it's, in a lot of cases, religious freedom and human rights seem to be at odds. They shouldn't be. If it's all done right, they shouldn't be, but they seem to be, and one's going to lose over the other, right? And so there has been a concerted attack on religion, and it's not. Somebody pointed out that there was never any push to force masks or vaccine status in mosques. Somebody said that,
Yeah.
but yet in churches there were. Now,
in fact, police would sit at mosque parking lots and protect the parishioners going in.
Right.
But the same police would the next day or later on in the day be arresting pastors for having a service.
So there's no shock there, because the first thing that Trudeau did was take a vacation with his friend Aga Khan, who is the undisputed king of the Muslims. That's basically what his title is. He's the king with no nation. He's the king of all the Muslims. So there's no shock that he's favoring one over the other. But should he be favoring any? So religious freedom, I don't think is completely happening. You still do have certain freedoms, but there should be no persecution, unless it's some sort of cult that is causing damage and doing terrorism or killing people or something like that. But regular mainstream, there's a push against that. There's been a push against that in the media and slandering in the media, and a lot of things are really myth and untrue about what goes on in religion. So the thing about religion, or spirituality, is there is a morality to it. And I know there's an argument out there that says, that it just, God isn't the only morality out there. But what there is a difference. And there's a difference in this. The thing about human nature, it seems to be pretty consistent, is that we all want justice for everyone else, but mercy for ourselves. So it's a hard, fast rule, and everybody deserves justice until it's a rule that I need to break. And then I need to get there and agree to with other people that we can break that rule. And then all of a sudden, so what the higher power does is it pulls you out of yourself, and there's a consistency there. And at least you know that you're doing right or wrong. So if there's a hard, fast pole between right and wrong, good and evil, if there's two polar opposites there, at least you know where you sit on that spectrum. When you remove those two poles and you remove the polar opposites of good and evil, or right and wrong, when you remove those, then nobody knows. They don't have an anchor to figure out who they are from that. So moving that morality, and the other thing is accountability, right? That's the thing that higher power offers. You've done something wrong, and there's an accountability for that. With our own morality, we decide whether or not we want to be held accountable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where this different morality comes from, because when we have those anchor points gone, then we don't know who we are, and we don't know where we sit on that spectrum. And it's not just religion that they've been attacking. Like we said, there's an argument that it's not just religion that you get morality from. So we want to play a couple clips from you. It's going to take a few minutes, but you're going to see the programming in this as well. So here is the Avengers. Now, the Avengers, superheroes are considered good.
Typically, yeah.
They're heroes. They're heroes for a reason. They battle against evil. So we see them as good. And they're I want to bring this back to Civil War, Captain America, Civil War.
Terry Ross has a Congressional Medal of Honor, which is one more than you have.
So let's say we agree to this thing. How long is it going to be before they LoJack us like a bunch of common criminals?
117 countries want to sign this. 117, Sam, and you're just like, no, it's cool, we got
How
it.
long are you going to play both sides?
I have an equation.
Oh, this will clear it up.
In the 8 years since Mr. Stark announced himself as Iron Man, the number of known enhanced persons has grown exponentially. And during the same period, the number of potentially world-ending events has risen at a commensurate rate.
He's saying it's our fault?
I'm saying there may be a causality. Our very strength invites challenge. Challenge incites conflict. And conflict breeds catastrophe. Oversight. Oversight is not an idea that can be dismissed out of hand.
Boom.
Tony, you're being uncharacteristically non-hyperverbal.
It's because he's already made up his mind.
Oh, you know me so well. Actually, I'm nursing an electromagnetic headache. That's what's going on, Cap. It's just pain. It's discomfort. Who's putting coffee grounds in the disposal? Am I running bed and breakfast for biker gang? Oh, that's Charles Spencer, by the way. He's a great kid. Computer engineering degree, 3.6 GPA. Had a floor-level gig, an Intel plan for the fall. But first, he wanted to put a few miles on his soul before he parked it behind a desk, see the world, maybe be of service. Charlie didn't want to go to Vegas or Fort Lauderdale, which is what I would do. He didn't go to Paris or Amsterdam, which sounds fun. He decided to spend his summer building sustainable housing for the poor, guess where? Sokovia. He wanted to make a difference, I suppose. I mean, we won't know because we dropped the building on him while we were kicking ass. There's no decision-making process here. We need to be put in check. Whatever form that takes, I'm game. If we can't accept limitations, we're boundaryless, we're no better than the bad guys.
Tony, if someone dies on your watch, you don't give up.
Who said we're giving up?
We are for not taking responsibility for our actions. This document just shifts the blame.
Sorry, Steve, that is dangerously arrogant. This is the United Nations we're talking about. It's not the World Security Council. It's not SHIELD. It's not Hydra.
No, but it's run by people with agendas, and agendas change.
That's good. That's why I'm here. When I realized what my weapons were capable of in the wrong hands, I shut it down, stopped manufacturing.
Tony, you chose to do that. If we sign this, we surrender our right to choose. What if this panel sends us somewhere we don't think we should go? What if there's somewhere we need to go and they don't let us? We may not be perfect, but the safest hands are still our own.
If we don't do this now, it's going to be done to us later. That's the fact. That won't be pretty.
You're saying they'll come for me.
We would protect you.
Maybe Tony's right. If we have one hand on the wheel, we can still steer. If we take it off...
Aren't you the same woman who told the government to kiss her ass a few years ago?
I'm reading the terrain.
So there you go. Let's pack that down a little bit. First takeaway there for me is the fact that that they're saying like the only people who get to choose right and wrong and what's heroic and what's not is the government.
So again, taking away our identity, taking away our intelligence, taking away our ability to choose right and wrong, which is something that, you know, our creator gave us. He gave us the freedom of free will, hoping we would choose good over evil. And when the government takes those choices away from you, when they put you in lockstep of identity deficit, they now have put you in a depressive, anxious mode where they can now come in and save you and give you your identity and help you decide right from wrong. They will put you in the cities. They will tell you what education to have, what job to have. They will give you the identity they believe you need to have. And that's what's going on. And this is why it's been so important for them to deconstruct the big eight that make our identity us, that make us unique to the world, that make us amazing to the world. They've
Right.
taken that away from us, and they believe that we're not capable of handling that responsibility, much like we just saw in the Avengers.
Now that is the Avengers, is Marvel, as you know. So now these are the hero figures. These are the people that we look up to. Now they are subjected to the government, right? And notice that they said the UN. This is the UN. We need to be a subject underneath the UN. Now that's a whole second takeaway. But obviously, the programming towards heroes are subjected to the UN, right? Which that's a whole nother thing. So that was Marvel. Now they have a competitor. Their competitor is DC. And I remember back in, I'm just going to addendum this. This is a clip from Batman versus Superman, or Superman versus Batman, or, everybody versus Lois Lane. Yeah.
Against each other.
That's right.
Good versus good.
Right. But I do want to make a reference to Man of Steel, which was the precursor movie before this one came out. And that was Superman surrendered to the general. Now he did it as a show of goodwill because they didn't know where to take him or what to do with him, and they said, we are concerned that there's an alien on our planet. He said, "I've been here for 33 years, not causing a problem." Now the parallel there is that Jesus was 33 before he started his ministry, and I would say without a doubt, Superman has always been seen as this God figure, the ultimate good versus evil, and he's been that metaphor for God. So I wanted to draw that parallel before we play this clip as well. But this is a whole different company.
We, as a population on this planet, have been looking for a savior. 90% of people believe in a higher power, and every religion believes in some sort of messianic figure. And when this savior character actually comes to Earth, we want to make him abide by our rules. We have to understand that this is a paradigm shift. We have to start thinking beyond politics.
Are there any moral constraints on this person? We have international law. On this Earth, every act is a political act.
Is it really surprising that the most powerful man in the world should be a figure of controversy?
To have an individual engaging in these state-level interventions should give us all pause.
Human beings have a horrible track record of following people of great power down paths that led to huge human atrocities.
We have always created icons in our own image. What we've done is we project ourselves onto him. The fact is, maybe he's not some sort of devil or Jesus character. Maybe he's just a guy trying to do the right thing.
We're talking about a being whose very existence challenges our own sense of priority in the universe. And you go back to Copernicus, where he restored the sun in the center of the known universe, displacing Earth. And you get to Darwinian evolution, and you find out we're not special on this Earth, we're just one among other life forms. And now we learn that we're not even special in the entire universe because there is Superman. There he is, an alien among us. We're not alone.
Are you, as a United States Senator, personally comfortable saying to a grieving parent, Superman could have saved your child, but on principle, we did not want him to act?
I'm not saying he shouldn't act. I'm saying he shouldn't act unilaterally.
What are we talking about here then? Must there be a Superman?
There is.
So, yeah.
Act unilaterally.
Right.
He doesn't have the right to choose right from wrong. International law that he and everybody else needs to abide by.
Right. So the same thing. He ended up going into trial. into court to defend whether or not he should be subject to the government again. So it was the same theme from a different company. The one thing I would want to go back over, remember we talked about purpose and destiny, and I don't want to gloss over Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's on the other side. Sorry about that. He said, no, we find out we're not special at all, right? So that's that dig against personal, personal purpose and destiny.
And part of your identity is something that makes you unique from everybody else.
Right. So there we go. So now we've got two big pillars. We've got our nationality. So now we're not uniting over our nationality. So we're not finding our collective against tyrannical government because we're not uniting over our identity. Not only that, the government has convinced a lot of people that freedom is bad, right? And they fell for it, right? And they use freedom with the word dumb in it. So a lot of people have thought that this idea of patriotism and the Canadian flag now is a thing of controversy. And so now the idea of national pride and our nationality, we can't unite over that now. And that was intentional. And now you've got religion and morality, right? Whether you're spiritual or not, you've got this religion or this morality, and now we're not uniting over that, right? Because they've destroyed that identity, right? So this is a national identity. It's an international identity. It's a spiritual identity. Ideologies are the hardest to get over. That's why they have so many troubles with extremism in Middle Eastern countries, right?
And now gender identity. They've ripped gender identity all to shreds. There's no longer just two genders. There's numerous genders. Sexual orientation, they've now ripped that to shreds, especially for our young kids. When they're trying to sexualize a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old and handing out surveys in schools saying, what sex are you attracted to? Girl, boy, man, or woman at 5. They don't understand what that is. In fact, a child's brain until the age of 7 has no clue about sexual orientation whatsoever. Not a clue. That it's the furthest thing from their mind. They walk in on mom and dad, they catch them, they think they're wrestling because they have no sense of what that is. And yet schools are now pushing that.
Right.
So again, sexual orientation, gender, all the
most basic, don't buy into the non-binary thing. Some people are confused, and I feel sorry for them in a world that doesn't understand. But at the same time, it is binary. It is a 1 or 2 kind of situation, ones and zeros, right? Ones and zeros. So it is very basic, right? And that's a very basic core. This helps you figure out who you are. Sure, you might be a tomboy or you might be feminine as a male. That's okay. Right? Who cares? But you're removing just the very core at an early age where they're doing this in kindergarten. They're trying to remove that. So we were getting to gender, and that's so now you've got your national, you've got your religious or spiritual, and now they're getting you on an individual basis. How are they attacking the family? Well, they're using gender identity and SOGI to separate kids from their parents. So the state is coming in and becoming wards of the children. Yeah. In BC, they have the infant law where infants include 19 and under. So up to 19 is considered an infant under the Infant Act in BC. And infants now, they feel as long as the doctor in charge feels that they comprehend what they're talking about, they can give consent. So even though unlikely to happen at this moment, conceivably a 5-year-old can consent to mutilating their own body or can consent to MAID and commit suicide with the help of adults guiding them down that path without the parents' consent or knowledge.
And if you guide them down a different path, you're the one that's the criminal.
Right. So the government now is not only saying that they have the right to, there should be no superheroes. We're the only ones that have the right to do that. Now we're the only ones that have the right to parent your children. And that's where they're going. They're dividing kids from their parents. Now they're breaking down that family while they break down the identities of these children.
But we're going to end you on a positive note.
Huzzah.
Huzzah. Because there are at least 5 ways to build a healthy self-identity. At least 5. There's probably more than 5, but I picked out of this article 5. And one the number one is build positive relationships. Surround yourself with good people, with positive people, people that have the same interests as you. Surround yourself with positivity, because when you surround yourself with positivity, it's really hard to be depressed. 2, self-reflection. Always be reflecting on yourself. How do you feel today? What are you doing to make yourself feel good? Because remember, the only person that's responsible for your happiness is you. The only person that can choose what's right for you is you. You have the right to choose. You have the free will to choose. You know what makes you happy. You know what your innate skills and abilities are. You know whether singing makes you happy, or kicking a ball makes you happy, or swinging a hammer, or dressing up in heels. You know what makes you happy. Do it. And constantly reflect on it.
Unless you're married, and then it's more of a
And
partnership.
the wife But self-reflection is a good thing. Always evaluate where you are in life. And if you're not where you think you should be, make the change to get there. You have that power. You have the power. Number 3, positive affirmation. Stop living in the negative. You know, Pink has a song out there where she talks about how horrible she speaks to herself, but she would never in a million years speak like that to anybody else. If you wouldn't say those words to anybody else, then don't say them to yourself. You are a good person. You are a unique person. You are a beautiful person. Your voice matters. Your mind matters. You matter. And you need to remind yourself of that every single day. I know I say it every time I go live on Instagram. Remind your children that their voice is beautiful and that they should never stop asking why, and that they have that right to question, and never, ever, ever shut your mouth in order to please somebody else, because your voice is beautiful. Your creativity is beautiful. And the only way we evolve as humans is if we have the ability to debate and speak. So remind yourself that you are beautiful if you need to do that. Remind yourself that you are smart. Remind yourself that you are creative. Remind yourself that you're an athlete. Remind yourself that you are worthy. 4, practice mindfulness. Take 60 seconds a day or an hour a day and just recenter yourself or ground yourself. For me, it's walking around in my bare feet and going outside in the grass and just feeling good, touching a tree. Mindfulness. Center yourself. Get back to where you are. Get back to your center of peace. And number 5, if you're really out of sorts, seek treatment. If you're confused, if you're questioning, if you're unhealthy, if you're depressed, if you're anxious, if you're frustrated, if you just need some spiritual guidance, seek treatment.
Yeah, there's no shame in it. You know, sometimes we just get into a certain pattern of thinking, and we need somebody to help us get out of that pattern of thinking, right? And so there's no shame in that.
There's no shame in that.
No.
So those are the 5 ways to help build a healthy and strong self-identity.
Right.
And don't ever, ever, ever let anybody make you question or be quiet about who you are. Don't ever let propaganda and the government decide for you who you are and what's right for you, because only you know what's right for you. And if you can get back to your morals, your values, what's important to you, good versus evil, you will always choose the side of good.
Right. And then back to the gender thing. I mean, for a lot of parents out there, you're wondering, this is a minefield. You know, they'll want to tell you that your child is questioning their gender, and that is making them confused and depressed. Okay, so that's not the case. I can tell you, I taught drama at kind of drama therapy at the Juvenile Detention Center, so juvie, for 3 years. And I can tell you that those kids in there blew away my misconceptions about prison, or why kids would be in there. Thought they were all in there because they were abused and they were, you know, they had hard lives and they were on the streets. Most of the time it was just parents who couldn't care less. They were neglected. So the parents just wanted to be buddies. They didn't want to be parents. They never gave them any solid rules. They let the kids do whatever they want. So there was no foundation. There was no consistency. Once they got into prison and they got consistency and they knew what the rules were, these kids thrived. They did really, really well. So what is really the problem in a lot of cases, these kids are on social media. And these kids are seeing a false picture. Everyone's showing this picture of themselves being super happy all the time. And your kid's left wondering, like, why am I the only one that's not happy? Right. And so there's this falseness in society now, and it's very predominant in this. And so these kids, if they're confused, which they are, because we're sending them mixed messages all the time, and you've got adults that don't want to be adults, they say adulting instead of actually stepping forward. They are pissed off at their bosses, so they wear giant prosthetic breasts instead of being a pillar for the kids. And they don't call other adults out on that stuff because they don't want to get called out, right? So they don't care about the kids. The kids know that. These kids aren't stupid, but they don't have adults that give them consistency, and they used to be consistent. Adults used to be consistent. Say what you want about the boomers, at least they had their set of rules that they lived by. And so there's no consistency. So these kids are confused, and confusion leads to depression, and then when they're depressed, we tell them they're depressed because they don't know what their gender is, and we confuse them more. We do this child abuse thing to them, and then we tell each other that, well, we don't, but a lot of people tell each other that you're doing the right thing because this is the way it's supposed to be, and we're affirming them, right? Well, what you're really doing is abusing them because you're confused, and then you justify it, and you get angry at other people when they call it abuse. And then so your child is just sitting there going, what the hell? And I had to navigate this with my kid, and that was the reason. She was depressed long before there was any confusion about sexuality or anything like that. And I said, here's the thing: sexual identity and gender identity isn't an identity. Okay. For starters, that's not your core identity. It might be a small part of your makeup, but the heterosexuals don't struggle with that. That's not a big thing. That's not a predominant part of our makeup. It is what it is. So let's find out what else your identity entails, and let's make that a small issue. And we did instantly. We started working on that, and we made sexual identity a small thing. It's a non-existent thing. Don't center your identity, your core identity. Don't make that the same thing that even insects can do, because that doesn't set you apart from animals, right? Let's find out something else about you. And that's how we navigated. And we did. We helped her find a core identity, and this became a non-issue. And it turns out she's dating a boy, one boy. That's all she wants to date is a boy, right? And so all of that stuff left when we worked that out. And when we started talking, the depression left, and you get into this fear cycle with your kids where they're not talking to you, and you start reacting out of fear because they're not talking. You push too hard, and it pushes them away, and you get into this crazy fear cycle. And we don't know how to talk about the gender thing because all their friends are telling you it's normal. Your teachers are telling them normal. Adults who are not acting like adults are telling them that it's normal. The media is telling them that it's normal. Social media is telling them that it's normal. And you come along as a parent and you say, hey, I don't know if that's really the norm. You've never been like this before. It's not a thing for you, right? And they tell you you're wrong, and they come to you and they're more confused. And so you just make it a non-issue and start working with them, and don't be afraid to talk to them.
But what is normal is everybody between the ages of probably 9 now, because we seem to be evolving a lot faster and our hormones are evolving a lot faster, it seems. So probably from the age of 9 to the age of 25, we're going to be confused about who we are, and what we are, and what our purpose and what our destiny is. And that's okay. Because this is where we're learning. Our brains are still developing, but we need to develop in a healthy, strong way. And it doesn't mean that you as a girl are now a boy because you're confused, or because your hormones are doing crazy things and making you feel crazy things. It's not what it means. It just means you're normal, your body's changing, your body's evolving, your hormones are causing crazy ups and downs in your emotions. But if you build your social circle with positive people, and you do constant self-reflection and positive affirmation, and you practice mindfulness, and you seek help to the questions you need answers to, you'll be okay.
Yeah. Also, left wing, right wing, also not a core identity. Let's start dropping that too. That's ridiculous. It's just meant to make us fight. So there we go. Let's start taking back what was, and the things that we're proud of, and be proud of who you are.
That's it.
Don't be ashamed of who you are.
And Agenda 2030. We know part of their agenda is to mess with our identity. And not only that, but to make our identity about biodigital convergence, making us a number. What did they call it? A unique identity number. We need to stop that from happening, folks.
Right.
So we need to keep our eyes on the ball, pay attention to these UN agendas, these UN meetings, September, what was it, 15th and 16th?
18th or something.
Oh, 18th in New York City. We've got the May 20th happening in Portugal with the WHO. Go onto the World Economic Forum website to see when they're having their meetings. We got to keep our eye on that ball, because before we know it, that's it. Take the agenda and shove it. Because before we know it, Agenda 2030, they're talking about ways to accelerate it, because we are making headway. We are causing issues for them. And they don't like it. So keep doing what you're doing, people.
Yeah.
Keep educating, keep recruiting, and keep taking action. You know, cut down those surveillance cameras, take your angle grinders, knock down those EMF towers. Keep talking to your kids. Keep talking to your kids.
Right. But find that purpose and find that identity, because you've got something to offer.
And keep saying no. That's it. Dash out. Keep saying no. You matter. Your identity matters. Build that foundation and rock it out.
All right. I think that leaves us with that show for now. So thanks, everyone. Dash out. You want to take? Oh, wait a minute. Hold on.
Be proud to be Canadian
Yeah.
or American or Australian or Japanese or whatever it is that you are, whatever country you are. Be proud to be a patriot of that country. Be proud of it. Wear it on your sleeve. Wear it on your coat. Wear it on your vehicle. Be proud of where you come from. If you're born in Canada, you're Canadian. Be proud of it. Canada, strong and free, glorious.
Good night, everybody. Good night. Dasha, want to take us out?
There he is.
See you Thursday.